that the former president will not return, or that his political movement, which is still very strong, will not once again take power in the United States.
So if you were wondering how President Biden is taking the midterm results, I'd say he's doing okay. Seems a little bit happy. Dark Brandon's getting a couple laughs in about the state of the MAGA movement or anything, and you could sort of understand it. They had been preparing for a devastating midterm that probably will still see them losing the House and maybe narrowly losing the Senate, but it is nothing like what was being predicted just a little bit ago. Bear in mind, for history's sake, midterm losses for the president's party have averaged 28 House seats and 4 Senate seats, and that's over the course of like a century. They're gonna do better than that. In recent midterms, Republicans lost 40 House seats back in 2018. Democrats lost the Senate and double-digit House seats in 2014 and 2010. Republicans did in 2006. So I think that Biden gets to laugh a little bit. I mean, look, to the extent that they've still had losses, which they have, I think that he could have done more. But we told him you need to pass a climate bill. We told him you need to cancel student loan debt. And he did these things. He has spoken out vigorously in defense of abortion rights and in defense of democracy, and has been criticized for that multiple times for focusing on those things. Well, it's been shown in exit polls that those were important issues to a lot of people. And so while I am one of the first people to criticize Joe Biden when I think he deserves it, and we're gonna be doing that in just a few minutes, I think he gets to laugh a little bit because he has avoided a perhaps devastating midterm election by doing some of the things we've been asking him to do. What do you think, Adrienne?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. To have midterm election results that haven't been seen since JFK's administration, like that's something to be proud of, especially given how there are so many Americans out there who have given him such low ratings, despite the many things he has done. He should have this moment to gloat, chuckle, and cheer just a little bit, because that red wave did not show up, and it's just. It really shows you how all the hype that the GOP was talking is nothing but hype. There was no action whatsoever.
Yeah. The question is now going forward, what is Biden gonna do? The laugh is fine, but the laugh isn't a governing strategy. So here's the initial word that's sort of being disseminated from the White House. If a narrow GOP victory in the House produces an unwieldy, chaotic majority, which that's the only kind they could possibly have with the GOP, it can give Democrats the perfect foil to highlight their differences. If Democrats keep a bare Senate majority, Biden could promote his agenda in that chamber and then rail against House Republicans for stalling it, which is actually sort of what I had predicted a few weeks ago. They had been talking on the right about how like we need people to understand that Republicans want to take over, not so that they can solve problems, but that way going into 2024, they can have created even more chaos. Democrats will have less capability to actually deal with issues as they come up. But that is a risky strategy. That only works if you can avoid culpability for the chaos. And if the Democrats are able to continue to demonstrate to people that they do have their backs by passing things in the Senate, and then everything gets shut down in the House, and that becomes the narrative of 2 years of America, then that could potentially hurt the Republicans. So they're basically theorizing that, like with Obama and Clinton, Biden can use the divided government to run against Congress in the second half of his term, and that could potentially help out the Democrats. That's by no means a guarantee of success, Adrienne, but I don't think it's as clear cut as the Republicans think it will be, the effect of them controlling the House.
Yeah, and I agree as well. The thing is, it's that they seem to have so much of a strong control when it comes to media and creating this narrative where they can make excuses for why they didn't approve things, why they didn't pass things, and they always love to point fingers when it comes to the Dems. And so I do wonder what the messaging will be that will end up really resonating with the American people, because the last thing I'd want to see is for after 2 years of them holding things up and creating this gridlock for American public to think that, oh, it's the Dems' fault. And as a result, go to the polls and try to bring DeSantis or whomever is on the GOP's ticket into office thinking that, oh, well, we just need to change leadership.
Yeah, maybe. But I said a couple minutes ago, we're gonna criticize Joe Biden. So I can only speak for myself, but I'm getting ready to do that. Get a load of this. In the coming weeks, Biden will ramp up his outreach to big dollar donors, timed to White House holiday parties to underwrite his likely re-election campaign. Okay, look, I get it. If he's gonna run for president, his strategy is gonna be generating a bunch of money. That's what they do. But like, if you're saying that your strategy is going to be, we're gonna clearly differentiate ourselves from the Republicans. They're just gonna be wasting time, not dealing with actual problems. And the first thing you wanna do is spend a bunch of time with millionaires and billionaires. Well, then are you really going to be trying to push through strong legislation? Maybe best case scenario, and I don't know how likely this is to happen, but honestly, think about the position like a sort of neoliberal would be right now. If they do maintain the Senate, but they lose the House, isn't that almost the perfect position for them? Because then they can have a bunch of the Democrats in the Senate that don't actually support like strong, like progressive proposals, pass them. They're not gonna pass the House anyway. It makes them look strong, vigorous, progressive, acknowledging actual economic crises. The GOP is definitely gonna tank it, and they have no actual risk of it happening. It's almost perfect. Maybe that's a bit too conspiratorial, except I feel like we've seen that regularly over the past few years. So I'm gonna try to temper a little bit of my enthusiasm if all of a sudden the Senate becomes super progressive for the next couple of years. It doesn't really mean that like all of a sudden Manchin's in support of this stuff. I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely spot on. A lot of these people are about performative antics. And that's exactly what they'd engage in terms of voting for things that they know is not going to make its way to the president's desk. And so I would not be surprised if people use this time in the Senate to possibly change their image and how they are perceived by the public and try to make themselves appear more progressive and then go, oh, well, gosh, we tried. It just didn't work out because of the House, but I am truly here for we the people. And I think the problem could come though with that is that if people do create this image of being more progressive and thus they are bolstered by the progressive ticket and progressive voters, then we'd be putting back in office people who actually are not here to serve the progressive agenda.
Yeah, sort of my fear. On the other hand, they could like maybe learn from Fetterman, do a little bit of that, but I have a feeling they're probably gonna resist those lessons.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.